guess if the applicant would come back up, we'll see what they came up with.
I got nervous playing chicken.
They don't look at you, Chris.
What I can do, I'll do a rear driveway if I can reduce lot size, and we'll work with planning and zoning on that to compensate for the cost.
But I mean, we don't know what he can, I mean, right now, you're not gonna decide that tonight, are we, Wes? I don't think we can. I mean, I know he's willing to do the rear driveway, and that would be great, but he, you know, y'all gonna have to get together to figure out how much
Well-
reduction he's talking about.
Well, the reason that we were asking for a larger lot
Was because
was
of the driveway.
because
Okay,
of the driveways.
so what would
So
be the standard?
if he takes the driveways out of there,
Mhm.
and I'm sure Tim and his team are gonna say, well, okay, yeah, you can have a lot size that's smaller, you know, to accommodate, for more lots.
You good with that? So what would the size be
Well,
without a driveway up front?
Well, if he's got, I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry. Wes was saying if the lots are internal at that point, then there's no driveways or down to just a couple for access.
Right.
So it's not an issue from a safety standpoint. So whatever our ordinance would allow as far as minimal lot size, I'm okay with that. Then the concern along the collector road goes away as far as the safety aspects of that, so.
So,
Are you aware of what that number would now be?
I know the minimal lot size is 60 foot, y'all
Okay.
require along 7,200 square feet. If I can get 75 foot, I'll go 75 wide, and I'll be good with that.
Yeah, well, that's better
yeah, I
than
mean,
what we're asking.
basically, if he has community water and sewer out there, if it's residentially zoned, you can drop it down to a 7,500 square foot lot with 60 foot of road frontage,
Okay,
so,
good. I think we figured it out. We don't have to postpone it.
the issue was basically the driveways and having that many driveways
Right.
on a collector road.
You have a better quality
You're gonna have more
of
units.
this.
you
Yeah,
know.
well, I think that's fine.
How many more?
Who made the motion?
Mr. Gillard
So
made the motion. Would you be okay, Tony?
Why don't you just change your motion to include those amendments?
Okay, do we know about how many more houses is that gonna be?
It's about 62 total.
So from about another 12 more houses, 62. And I guess that's the only thing we're gonna have. Okay, I'll change my motion to accept that. With stipulations, with
We have a
stipulations.
motion by Mr. Gillard to
Ju-
uphold planning and zoning with stipulations. And we have a second by Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, go to
Ms. Gadd.
Mr. Gadd.
Look here.
Let me go to legal counsel at this time. Mr. Gabb.
Yeah, right now, I don't know that the stipulations have been clearly stated. As an example, are we going to limit or have a certain number of entrances and exits for the development? Are we limit that to 2, 3? I know the driveways to the back.
Can you give us a number on how many exit would we be having with those?
The more I could have, the better. Whatever y'all recommend, I mean, how many do you?
Gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, a reasonable number would be no greater than 6. That generally puts you at 4 to 6 units per drive. So you're talking 3 to 4 each direction, which is reasonable on the rear side. So you'd have, 6 to 8 units per drive.
Tim, can you
Per
enlighten me a
access
little bit
point.
more on that request for 6, please?
Tell us how many you want.
Yeah.
I'd like to look at it a little closer, but I would prefer probably half that.
3.
3 what?
3 exit.
4?
Meet in the middle?
Half of 6 is 3,
That's
not
correct.
4.
It's a mile's worth of roadway.
How many?
I prefer 3.
We would prefer 3.
Okay, that's good. 3.
Okay. All right. I had a motion and a second with stipulations.
And if we can restate the stipulation, I'll ask Tim and Wes to kind of chime in if I miss it. But it'll be to accept, to rezone, allow the rezoning with the driveway to the back
To the rear.
with no more than 3 entrances, exits onto McCowan Road. Is that,
Or Manchester.
I'm sorry, Manchester Road.
And lot spacing
And
75.
lot space, Mr. Crane, would be what again now?
75.
It's 75 foot of road frontage.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you okay with that, Mr. Connor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. White? You've
All
got
right,
the floor.
sorry to throw a wrench into everybody's plan here, but, all right, so we established a back drive, smaller lots. What size house are you planning on building on these lots? Now that we've had to give you smaller lots to increase the number of homes, I don't want homes that are built here that depreciates other people's property that they have there, now that we've had to do this. So exactly what kind of square footage are we
Same
looking at?
size. The lots are going to be 15,450 square feet each. It's still going to be good-sized lots. They're
Even
going to
with
be
the
all,
size we just talked about?
yeah, 75 by, it's 206. Those 16, that's where I'm going to go with those.
I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Latour?
I just wanted to say, I don't know if y'all check with the utility company, you have to stay 75 foot from the high lines, plus a 60-foot road. I just wanted to make sure that y'all talk to them just to see.
It won't be a road like he had discussed. It's going to be a private drive.
Okay, okay. Just wanted to let you know, make sure y'all aware of that.
Mr. McMillan?
So the Savannah here is at 1,800 square foot living, 2,600 total. This is the same square footage home you're going to be building.
16 to 1,800. I put some 16 to 1,800 square foot floor plans in there.
Okay, but, and the total, is that living, 1,600 living?
Yes,
So you
yeah,
are-
I'm sorry, when I say 1,600, that's living, yeah.
So we're at 1,826 now.
They're starting at 1,600. That's going to be the minimum. Minimum would be 1,600.
But you're going to build some bigger ones. There's going to be a minimum of, or
Minimum of 1,600,
are you
yes.
going to build some of these larger homes also?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Guillory?
Just to, I guess the safety part, and what about fire trucks and, you know, school buses and things going back there, turning around, and what about
They
fire
probably,
trucks?
well, they're probably not going to go back there in those alleys. They're going to probably stay on the public street, because that's all going to be private.
Okay. Just want to make sure that the safety part of it is also there. And just one more thing. I do want to thank Mr. Brad and his group. I have a neighborhood watch meeting, and most of the times, these contractors don't get to go to neighborhood watch meetings. They don't go at all. And I want to thank him for coming out to my neighborhood watch meeting before, I think about 4 or 5 months ago, I don't know the exact time. And he came out and presented the project, and the community came out. I want to thank the community for coming out. And he also went back and did a lot of changes of the things that the community wanted. So I wanted to thank you for at least coming out to the neighborhood watch, and maybe more contractors will do what you did and go to talk to the community.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Guillory. I'm going to go right now to Mr. Crane.
Mr. President, I just want to make sure that, that it's stipulated that the alley must meet the ordinance, the code of ordinance requirements that's set forth, because there is a section in the code of ordinance that talks about alleys and has some it has some dimensions and things like that. So I just want to make sure y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Crane.
Now,
Mr. Go ahead, Mr. Guillory.
I was going to say, I know this is a short piece right there. It doesn't have all the recommendations up here, but as I was reading on the one that I had on my email, it had a whole list of recommendations, and all of that is going to be in there, right, plus the one we're adding.
Correct. I think those stipulations may have been part of, for the actual preliminary subdivision plat.
Okay,
And so, yes, those will be added on there.
okay.
Yes, sir.
You done, Mr. Guillory?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
All right,
Yield back.
Mr. McMillan, I'll close with you.
Well, I'd like to call the residents up. I'd like to talk to Miss Judy if I could, and Ms. Dalton, I think, was the other one. I'd like to get their opinion on this. We're making decisions, and you know, I want to see both sides of this coin.
Judy Bernard.
Pull the mic
Pull your mic down.
Yeah. I'm not sure about it, because now, you know, I like the fact that, yes, it's gonna be to the back. I'm a retired teacher, so therefore, you're talking about buses, and I live on Erica Drive. We have two type of, we got Calcasieu Parish coming through, and we got the charter school coming through. These buses are coming 6:15 in the morning, they're coming 6:30 in the morning. Now, you're talking about 60-some houses, you're talking about a lot of children. Those children gonna be picked up off the street? Are you serious? I mean, come on, safety issue with these babies. You're talking about 3-year-olds getting on the bus, 4-year-olds getting on the bus. You know, I mean, come on. I don't want a child killed. My husband is a plant worker. He's leaving 6:20 in the morning. It's been foggy lately, so he might be leaving 6:15, 6:10 for the next 5 years before he retires. And if we have all, we have all of this coming in. This is a lot coming in. They don't, nobody is understanding that Manchester Road is our main road, and we got people that's living way out there. They taking Manchester Road, and some of them driving like a bat. I don't know what. They're not driving 45. They driving fast. And I have told the sheriff department about them driving fast, and sometimes they come and check, but it's not a consistent thing with them checking on the speed limit. I'm just afraid for these babies, okay? I'm a retired teacher. I have worked 30 years in the system. I know when I'm driving to work over the years, sometimes children are not being watched. Children, and it's not an older child's responsibility to watch a kindergartner or a pre-K running around. You know, come on, we just don't want nobody to get killed. No loss of life, okay?
And I would just ask,
I would
for
ask,
you all
I
just
would
to give
ask
us.
her opinion also. I'm going to ask you, so you're not time limited.
Okay.
But I'm going to ask you your opinion also of what you saw in our compromises.
Yeah, like, for me, I'm with what Ms. Judy just said. I have the same concerns, but I would ask if you all just please, he needs to take at least 2 weeks. If he can't take a month, take 2 weeks and get a better plan, because I just don't think he can make a decision this quick tonight. And I really think, like she said, we got a lot of safety concerns still, even though he did the rear. It's still not solving every problem. I think they need to step back and take a look at their plans. And that's what I think. And can I ask the residents that are here, just kind of wave your hand, just to let the room know who's in here, who's supportive of it? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. It is a tough decision, and we are rushing this, and we went out for a recess and come back with a different plan completely. I still believe, like she believes, that we ought to wait 2 weeks. And I think that it's us as a jury that has to make the decision, both on the number and what we can do, and we're changing things up. Safety factor of those kids, and having those kids all walk down to that end to catch that bus at the end, we got to come up with a better way. And there's been a lot of quick decisions made here tonight in a short period of time. I like the deferral route. With that being said, I yield, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Barris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I live in a rural area. I mean, I'm not going to give you the walked uphill both ways to school story, but going to wait for the bus at the end of the road was a part of life. Presently, right now, I look out my kitchen window and there's a 100-lot subdivision being built. When I walk to the end of my driveway, just across the street behind my neighbors across the street, within 2 to 3 years, there will be another 81 houses supposedly. You know, it's the sign of the times. We're growing everywhere, and traffic is everywhere. Crowding is everywhere. I'm not totally against just doing it tonight. I mean, they're gonna have to go with all the stipulations for the driveway and the soil studies and all of that. I don't know. I don't know about the waiting. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. Scott.
You know, I do like the compromise when we sit down and nobody leaves happy. But there are a lot of kids standing on side of major roads today, every morning, catching buses.
That's right.
So, and I want them all to be safe. You know, we've come here tonight, and I think we've looked at both sides, and I think we would do Alan Smith a service in everybody leaving unhappy, but yet a project moving forward. You know, that's kind of the way we are sometimes. So I think we've done our job tonight, and I can support the compromise that we've come up with. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Andrew Pond?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not an architect, I'm not a contractor, and I'm not an engineer, okay? I've heard a lot of discussion here tonight. I think we have to rely, and the applicant has already agreed to do whatever we have asked him to do, okay? First thing, we have to rely on Mr. Connors and Mr., what's your name again? For guidance, and they don't seem to have a problem with what we've discussed here tonight. I mean, we can pick this thing apart. There's no hide left on this horse, I promise you. We have ridden this thing to death. And I call the question. I think a roll call is appropriate. Vote for it, vote against it, but let's move forward.
Amen.
I rest.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. I had a motion by Mr. Guillory to uphold planning and zoning with stipulations, and I had a second by Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, go ahead. And, Mr. President, if we can, I can try to restate the stipulation again,
Yes,
just
I
to
was
have
gonna
it
call
all
on Ms.
clear. Ms. Kathy, you want me to, you or me?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Ms. Kathy.
The motion right now, as I see it, is to allow rezoning with stipulations, with additional stipulation that lots would now meet parish standards with an alley to the back of the property, to the development, that also meets parish standards, with a maximum of 3 entrances, exits to Manchester Road.
And 75-foot.
That's part of the parish.
All right. All right, Ms. Kathy, I guess we'll take a roll call vote.
Okay, is this reversed? We will begin with the A's. Mr. Angelbont?
Voting to uphold, right?
Yes, sir.
With stipulations. Yes.
To allow them?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Barris?
Yes.
Mr. Brain?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
No.
Mr. Farnum is not here. Mr. Guillory?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Landry?
Yes.
Mr. Latour?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
No.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mrs. Trimmy?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. Item number 13 carries. Moving on to item number 14. Take appropriate action on a request by Mark Stelly to rezone from agriculture to manufactured home
like to
park
move on 14,
to allow a
uphold planning and
manufactured
zoning.
home park at 6659 Cowan Road in Ward 8. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, March 21st, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. I have a motion by Mr. Latour to uphold planning and zoning with stipulations, and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 14 passes. Item number 15, take appropriate action on request
Like to
by
move on
Fred Delaney
15, to uphold
to
planning and zoning.
rezone from heavy industrial to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle park at 6018 Farm Road in Ward 8. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, March 21st, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. I have a motion by Mr. Latour to uphold planning and zoning with stipulations, and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? Item number 15 carries. Item 16, take appropriate action on a request by Woodlake Park Estates LLC to amend the stipulations in ordinance number 6622 that the development adhered to the site plans on file in order to allow 4 additional spaces for recreational vehicles at 1606 West 4th Street in Ward 6. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, March 21st, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy to uphold planning and zoning with stipulations, and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 17, consideration of adopting a resolution urging the Calcasieu Congressional Delegation to support the Community Development Block Grant formula funding for fiscal year 2018 at the current level of funding, which is $3.06 billion. I have a motion by Mr. Calvin and a second by Mr. Barris. Item number 17 carries. Item 18, consideration of adopting an ordinance rescinding ordinance number 65.
Move on 18.
Due to the prospective bidder failing to fulfill the necessary requirements in order to complete the sale. I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Brame. Any discussion? Any objection? Item number 18 carries. Item number 19.
Move on 19.
Consideration of adopting a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the Louisiana various state agencies and local government to reduce flood risks for homes, businesses, and community assets. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Latour. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried on number 19. Item number 20.
Move on item 20.
Consideration of adopting a resolution approving an exception to the parish's utility permit standards for the installation of a pipeline along Mike Hooks Road in Ward 4. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. White. Any discussion? Any objection? Item number 20 carries. Item number 21, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a cooperative endeavor.
Move on
between
21.
Second. And 5S Group LLC for maintenance and repairs of Burton Shipyard Road. I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Brame. Any discussion? Do I have discussion, Mr. Landry? No.
If you want me to, I'll.
I saw your hand up, Mr. Landry.
Oh, no, it's, I'm good.
There is none. No discussion? Any objection? Motion, item number 21 carries. Item number 22, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the renewal of the joint service agreement between the police jury as governing authority
Second.
of Ward 3, Fire Protection District Number 2, and the city of Lake Charles. I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objections? We do have discussion. Mr. Scott.
Mr. Beam, did the price go up, or is it the same agreement
I'm sorry,
on
we're on
the
22?
fire district and Ward 3?
No, the way it's structured, Mr. Scott, is that the city gets all the revenue from whatever is raised through the ad valorem tax for that district, with the exception of, there's some money through state fee that's separate, but, so it's not a set dollar amount. We basically get the tax revenue, the city gets that, and they utilize it to provide the protection.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other discussion? Any objection? Item number 22 passes. Item number 23, consideration of adopting a
23,
resolution
vote.
approving the following items related to the purchase of property of Louisiana Avenue, Lake Charles. I have two items. I have a motion by Mr. Landry.
Both bullets.
I have a motion by Mr. Landry on both bullets and a second by Mr. White. Let me read those into the record. Item A, approve the purchase of property located at Louisiana Avenue, Lake Charles, within the appraisal value of the property from S.W. Arthur Properties Company LLC. Item B, approve an agreement between the police jury, Lake Charles, and Gravity Drainage District Number 4 and Ward 3 for cost sharing in the purchase of property. At this time, I'd like to call on Mr. Beam.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd be brief, certainly take any questions. Just so we're clear, the intent of this is to have property for what would be a drainage retention pond. That wouldn't just be a small pond. I think this is approximately 16 acres, and it is located well for serving that purpose in terms of its access to the contraband bayou tributaries. That is the purpose of this, and we're doing it in two parts because it would be a cost share between the police jury, the city of Lake Charles, and Gravity Drainage Ward 3. 50% parish, 25% city, 25% district. But we have to actually approve of making an offer and agreeing to it with an appraised value, which is still a range there between what we show and what they would. But we can work within that with your approval.
And Mr. Beam, just to add a little bit to it, that would alleviate a lot of problems that area is having right now if we could get that put into place. Am I
Yes,
correct
now,
in
just
saying that?
so we're clear, this is strictly the property purchase. To build a detention pond is very, very complex, and this does not commit any of the three parties to anything other than the property purchase. But yes, in the future, more funding agreed upon, however that would be structured, we've gotten a good engineering study from a Houston firm that does this
Yeah.
strictly, and it is a very, what they call high benefit cost ratio, which means it will serve, you would see a considerable decrease when you have rain events as far as flooding.
And I think that's what a lot of citizens here in Calcasieu Parish is looking for.
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Mr. President. So also, just to clarify, at the completion of this project, the hope is that it would help people all along Contraband Bayou. I mean, the ripple effects would be,
Yes, and I would defer to Alan. I've got to be careful.
I understand you can't be.
There are 4 reaches, is what they call them. There are more benefits in like certain ones, but yes, you're correct, Mr. Hunter. It's not just for like the nearby neighborhood. It's
Exactly.
a lot of the people.
And I think my point is that in the future, projects like these that are actually outside the city limits can actually help inside the city limits. So to say that money's not spent inside the city limits is not helping the city of Lake Charles is not an accurate statement. Just because
Correct.
it's not spent inside the city limits doesn't mean it's not helping the city of Lake Charles. This
Correct.
project is, but in the future, there may be projects that could help the city of Lake Charles.
Absolutely.
That happen to be outside the city limits.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Mr. Scott?
And to follow on what Mr. Hunter said, so this is specifically to purchase property 50, 25, 25. Now,
Correct.
when we look at the big picture, do we have is there an estimate for that entire project, Mr. Wainwright?
Yes, sir, we've run through some basic estimates, which would, for the piece we're looking at this point, the 16 or a little bit less, will be in about the $5 million additional range to build the pond. We have a lot of little question marks to answer before you would pin that down, but right now we have that estimate, and that's what was used in the cost-benefit analysis and, you know, the, trying to develop answers as to whether you should or shouldn't go forward with this site.
All right, and I'm with Mr. Hunter. This is 100% helping the city of Lake Charles, which helps the entire parish. So as we move forward and this becomes possibly one of those capital improvement projects to help drainage, I'm assuming we're going to look at that same type of revenue sharing to make sure that we all have skin in the game. And I know
I'll try to
we're
take-
premature, but if you take a
Well,
shot at it.
I think it's a good question, Mr. Scott. The fact is, like a lot of public services, there's always a whole lot more demand than supply of funds. The more participation we get, in this case, let's use Lake Charles, from the city, from the drainage district, and the parish, we can do more. Do we have to get that in the future? No, but to actually pull these off, we can't do it all. And we certainly would want to pursue a shared cost. I don't know about the percentages, but yes, we would try to have something. But we all recognize we need to acquire the property or it won't matter.
So we just need to make sure we protect the property. How long down the road do you think all of our drainage ordinances and discussions with the shareholders and stakeholders, and, you know, where are we at in that process, if you can
Very
brief
close to
debrief?
coming back. Alan and his team and Wes and his group have been working together actually on that detailed wording. So I think we're very close. Probably something soon in the month of April, we'll be able to give you something more solid.
All right, well, I'm all right with just purchasing the property, but I know we got some hurdles in the future to actually pay for this and make sure that the city of Lake Charles gets flood protection. But, you know, it is the city of Lake Charles. We want to do our part, but I think everyone should have skin in the game. And so I know I've heard some discussion in the past about you owe us $2 million a year out of y'all's road and drainage trust. But, you know, this is a clear example of you're getting that 2 million somewhere along the way. So that's just my opinion, and I'll leave it at that.
Well,
Thank you,
can I-
Mr. President.
Mr.
Go ahead, Mr. Bean.
Guidry, just so, I'm glad you asked that or brought that up. If this gets approved and if we still can work out a purchase, which has to happen, our share of this would come out of that tax, which it's your tax. It would go to that project, which is 100% in the city. So yes, I think you're doing exactly what we've all said we've been doing all along and helping the cities and outside the cities. I would state, just for clarification, the district gravity drainage has already approved of a match. They give them full credit. They heard the presentation from the engineering firm. As I understand it, the city of Lake Charles, depending on what happens tonight, they are scheduled to put this on an agenda next Tuesday, but it would be for action on their April 5th meeting, is what I've been told. That's it.
Mr. Barris.
I just, and very briefly, I just want to just echo the need to have everybody's skin in the game. You know, if there's a percentage, you know, of the Lake Charles residents that are, you know, a larger percentage of the Lake Charles inside the city limits, residents being helped by something that's going to be outside the city limits. I mean, I don't know if this is just the de facto model we're going to use, you know, those figures and those cost shared, but, you know, if, I echo Mr. Scott's sentiment on that, in that regard. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Latour.
I was just curious, how much of this is going to come, or any, is going to come from the parish-wide drainage fund?
Our share, Mr. Latour, the proposal, and that would be, when I say proposal, that's what item B is, the joint agreement. That would basically be the funding arrangement set forth in item B. Our 50% in that agreement would come from what we call the road and drainage property tax. It's a roughly 4 mil parish-wide tax, so the cities, all the cities and unincorporated areas pay it. And that's where, in this agreement, the police jury share would come from.
I see.
So it's an ad valorem, it's a property tax.
Okay, that's what I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Latour. Mr. Landry.
How long have we been working on this, Alan? I'm trying, I can't remember. It's been less than a year, hasn't it?
Well, I'd be lying to you, probably a little longer than that when you really brought the first questions of let's look into that site. So I'm gonna put it at closer to a year, sir.
That's fast in government time, isn't it? No, that's good. Of course, when you get engineers involved, that always slows it down. But you know, we want to make sure we're doing the right thing, and I know y'all checked it all out ahead of time, and which is good, because you don't want to go out and spend money on a maybe. We want to make sure that it's going to work. And you know, one number that I remember you telling me, at the mouth of the bayou, it made 1.5 foot difference. Isn't that correct?
Well, look, it's correct on some of the scenarios, so
Right, and I know the
before people
design-
get a little too much, I don't want to be misleading. We had a couple scenarios, there's different acreages around that area that were possible, so the larger scenarios, the larger ponds, had some pretty impressive reductions in flood elevations around there. This piece that we're at right now, and only trying to get purchased, would be a little less than that, so the you know, but it still has a significant impact on that entire watershed, and especially in the reach where the pond is at, which would be Louisiana Avenue, right there on that corner, especially street flooding in that area. You know, the modeling efforts we've done show really good results there. So we're encouraged, but we do highlight that this is a step in the right direction for Contraband Bayou, not a one project problem-solved situation. We need to go in this is a strategy, not a one-time thing.
Not a silver bullet.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, we can get that extra acreage and improve, and I know the numbers will get even better, but thank you. I know y'all worked hard, you, and I guess Terry was the one that first worked on the numbers for you to begin with, but Thank y'all. Y'all did a great job on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Landry. And Mr. White, I was not going to forget about you.
Question that popped in my head with this agreement with Lake Charles City. When it comes time for the taxpayers that within or in around my district that pay taxes that goes towards this fund that we're giving towards Lake Charles, when it comes time for these improvements for my area or Moss Bluff in general, is the city of Lake Charles going to donate some of that money back for future projects there as well? And I ask that question because the taxpayers within and around my district pay that money. It should only be fair for it also to come back to us as well in the future.
Well, my comments on that, Mr. White, everybody does pay in, so our approach, and I commend Alan and his team, and they're far along in this, is we have, I don't want to say we don't look at city limit lines, but we say, okay, what are the most high priority impact projects? And you want to also make sure it's spread throughout, but we recognize cities can't legally give funds in certain ways, but the key here, I guess, is what I want to assure you and your district and any others is whatever those projects are, these monies, this parish-wide tax is going to be, all of these would have to be ranked, and so we would want to apply the same criteria. I think Chris alluded to it, but this detention pond, I'll give Chris a lot of credit. It was brought to our attention, but it happens to be, it wasn't because it just was brought, it ranks very high. And so, for example, I realize this is another one, but Belfield Ditch in your area, those we would zero in on. So we want to see participation when it's in a particular city and a district, but we're not necessarily going to try to do a tit for tat. It's more of let's all share for this area, whoever's responsible. Because we do, there's two taxes involved here on this one. Parish collects it in the district. It's not a city tax. However, it's a city-located property, and I think that share, we believe, is a fair one in this one. I think it represents a good cost share. It's not going to be the same case every time, but to answer your question, now, maybe that's for Sam, I don't know that they could legally do that. I don't know.
I just don't want it forgotten that within our address there, it still says Lake Charles. So you're at a crossroads there, so.
Maybe we can do it by zip code.
Thank you, Mr. White.
It could be annexed.
Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. White, I understand your concern. I just think there are some areas where we have to look at ourselves as Calcasieu Parish. We can't look at ourselves as Ward 1 or Ward 3 or Lake Charles or Moss Bluff. Drainage is absolutely one of those areas. We have a parish-wide juvenile justice tax. We have a parish-wide library tax. And I don't want us to go backwards and start saying, well, only these taxes raised in certain areas have to go to that geographic area. I don't think that's acting like a community. And this, especially in drainage, is one of those areas where I think we've got to look at ourselves as Calcasieu Parish. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. I had a motion by Mr. Landry on both bullets, and I had a second by Mr. White. Any other discussion?
We gotta read the second.
I read both of them.
You did?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Sorry.
That's okay, Mr. Landry. That's no objection. Item number 23 passes. Moving on to item number 24, consideration of adopting a resolution amending the fee structure for the Calcasieu Parish Public Transit System effective July 1st, 2017. I have a motion by Mr. Guillory and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Yes. We do have discussion. Mr. Guillory.
Yes. Just right quick, Mr. Terrick, I know that this is not a major increase. I was just going to ask, are we letting the people know that riding already what it's going up to? I know it's only like 50 cents, but just to let them know. Are we going to put it on CGov, or are we letting the people know already that about the increase?
We will start a public education campaign immediately after this is approved by the jury. So that's why it's not going into effect until July 1. Between this time and July 1, we'll start public education.
Thank you, Mr. Terrick. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have discussion. Mr. McMillan.
Why are the fees going up? Why?
Well, there's a lot of ways that I can answer that question, but I think that the best way is that about 5 years ago, the advisory board, which several of our police jury members serve on, we wanted to make sure that we kept pace. And so 5 years ago, when we first adopted this, we also said that every 5 years that we would look at the fee structure and make adjustments.
I knew you had a good answer. And I know people would ask, why did it go up? So thank you for answering that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. McMillan. Ms. Mayo, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, then. Mr. Scott.
I think that's a good answer, but I don't know if, why are you going up? I know you said that you looked at it, adjusted, are you having more people, you have more breakdowns, fuel ain't up, I mean, like.
All of the above.
All of the above.
We've looked at all of those factors. We've looked at trends. We've looked at trying to keep pace with other transit systems. We've benchmarked with other programs across the region as well. And so, taking all those factors into consideration, we came up with this adjustment.
Are you losing money right now?
I'm not sure that's a question that I can answer. I'm going to defer.
Are we subsidizing transit to keep it running?
I would say heavily.
Typical government, yeah, we're definitely subsidizing. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
I have another comment, Mr. Police. Mr. Landry.
No, I got a comment on Mr. Scott's. Look, you're never going to make money on transit, I can promise you, but it's a quality of life issue and helping people get to work that can't get there. And so, you know, that's kind of one of those things. I mean, yeah, I'd like to lose the least amount that you can, but you're not going to make, you're not going to make money. If you want to make money, you need to go in business for yourself. Although some of those people don't make money either, but, you know, I mean, hey, it's quality of life. You're just not going to make it. And actually, that's probably why the fees went up, because he's trying to lose the least amount that he can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Landry. Thank you, Mr. Police. We had a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Item number 24 carries. Item number 25. Take appropriate actions on bids received by the parish purchasing agent for the following. A, 2 SUVs for use by the Office of Juvenile Justice Service. Mr. Dane, did you have any comments on those 2 vehicles for us?
No, sir. I think they've been reviewed, and I think they'll be ready for purchase.
Okay. We had a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion number 25 carries. Motion number 26, consideration of
Second.
proclaiming April 2017 as Fair Housing Month in Calcasieu Parish. We have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? Item number 26 carries. Item number 27, consideration of
Move on,
adopting a
27.
resolution of condolences to be forwarded to the family of the late Mr. Mark Abraham. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you. Actually, Mark Abraham is still alive. This is for.
He said that, I looked over, like, what the?
You would hate me if I said that.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Sorry, Mr. Hunter.
This is Mark. This is Mark's uncle and Mac, of course, the Abraham family. Mac was a patriarch of Lake Charles. Been in business for many years. He was a good friend, and condolences go out to his daughter Suzanne and son-in-law Charles. Wonderful family, wonderful people. He lived a wonderful long life, and he was a great guy. He's going to be missed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Hunter. Any other comments? I had a motion by Mr. Hunter and a second by Mr. Brain.
Motion to adjourn.
At this time, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion and a second. We are now.
How long are we ever